We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Inbox of the Dam. The email wasn't meant for him. It landed in his inbox at 1:47 a.m., sandwiched between spam and a Home Depot receipt. Mark Sullivan blinked at the subject line. Final dosage confirmation. Patient must not know. The body was short. All set for Friday. Mix with morning smoothie. Same dose as before. Confirm payment received. No name. Just a signature. R. Hale. Mark stared at it confused, still groggy from sleep. He scrolled up, thinking it was a phishing scam. Then he saw the full thread. Dozens of replies. Dozens of hidden truths. One from Jessica, his wife. Make sure he doesn't feel anything. I want it to look like a stroke. His blood turned cold. For a moment, the world around him dulled. The hum of the fridge, the glow of his screen, even the early Denver snow falling outside, all faded. His hands trembled as he scrolled, eyes devouring every line. I'll be free soon. He signed the life insurance papers. Don't forget the password to his banking app. He keeps it in that stupid old notebook. The notebook was sitting 3 feet away. Mark stood slowly, his breath catching in his throat. The silence in the room felt heavier now, like it knew something. He turned toward the hallway where Jessica slept, curled up in their bed. Peaceful, innocent, murderous. Everything in him wanted to storm into that room and scream. Shake her. Demand answers. But his instincts, quiet and sharp from years of writing code and spotting data breaches, told him one thing. Not yet. He closed the laptop, heart pounding, and whispered into the dark. She's planning my funeral. But what if I planned hers first? Hey. If you're still watching, that means you're enjoying the story. I have one small request. I'm trying to reach my first 1,000 subscribers. If you like stories like this, please hit the like button and subscribe to join the journey. It means a lot to me, and trust me, even better stories are coming. Now let's continue story. It started with a mistyped reply. Mark had been copying code snippets from his desktop to his laptop for work. In the middle of a late-night sync, his email client crashed. Something about permissions. He forced it to restart. That's when the thread opened up. And when it did, it cracked his life in half. The glitch didn't just reveal one message. It revealed the whole hidden thread, a string of encrypted emails that had somehow bypassed his filters, buried in a dummy label. His own wife had been corresponding with a man named Ryan Hale, using aliases and secure VPNs. But she'd slipped once. Just once. She'd used their home IP while replying on her phone, probably assuming he wouldn't notice. But Mark noticed everything. That was his job. He spent the next 5 hours combing their shared devices, tracing message headers, pinging IPs. What he found was staggering. Photos, private hotel bookings, conversations with titles like D-Day and postmarked future. And then the document that stopped him cold, a life insurance policy in her name, signed electronically by him. He didn't remember signing it, but he knew how easily a signature could be forged digitally. The payout? $1.5 million. To be used in the event of accidental death. The signs had been there. His recent fatigue. The headaches. That weird dizziness last week after Jessica insisted he drink her homemade detox smoothie. He thought he was just burning out. He wasn't. She was testing the poison. He stared at the screen, fist clenched, his breath short and tight. Everything he loved, everything he trusted, turned out to be a script. A setup. Not anymore. He copied the files, encrypted them, and stashed them in a cold cloud vault. He didn't know how yet, but he knew one thing. He wasn't going to die. Ryan Hale. Paramedic. Decorated. Handsome. Single father. Everything Jessica's online family updates had claimed he wasn't talking to. Mark sat in the car across from the fire station Ryan worked at, watching him laugh with coworkers. He looked like the kind of guy who shook hands too firmly and complimented your dog just to win trust. But Mark had read the emails. I want him gone, Ree. You promised this would be clean. No autopsy flags. Afterward, we'll disappear. Just me, you, and freedom. Freedom. That word made Mark grip the steering wheel so tight his knuckles cracked. Jessica hadn't just cheated. She had reinvented herself with another man, torn down their 15 years together like it was drywall. And Ryan? He wasn't just a fling. He was a co-conspirator. But there was more. Mark dug into public records. Ryan had changed jobs often, transferred counties. His last serious relationship ended after a suspicious car crash. His fiancée had died en route to her bridal fitting. No foul play was confirmed. But Mark knew what patterns looked like, and this man had one. Mark took photos, documented habits. When Ryan left work, Mark followed from a safe distance. He tailed into a Marriott on 14th Street, room 403. Jessica was already inside. Mark parked, heart racing, fingers white against the gearshift. He didn't go in. Not yet. He had a camera on their hotel room from the hallway, installed during his business trip the week before. The live feed showed her laughing. She kissed Ryan, unzipped his uniform. Mark stared at the screen, heartbreaking and hardening at once. His voice was calm as he hit record. Game on, Jessica. Babe, you want green or blueberry in your smoothie today? Jessica's voice floated from the kitchen like everything was normal. Mark sat at the edge of the bed, pulling on his socks. Blueberry, he said, keeping his tone steady. Need something sweet today. She kissed his cheek from behind. Her lips lingered a second longer than usual. You've been looking so tired lately, she whispered. I'm worried about you. He gave her a small smile, studied, not stiff. I probably just need more sleep. The blender roared. The sound had always annoyed him. Now it made his stomach twist. She handed him the glass with her usual cheerful smile. To health, she said, clinking her own glass against his. He raised it to his lips, barely let the smoothie touch his tongue before setting it down. Forgot I've got a conference call in 10, he said. Gonna wait. Jessica blinked. Just for a second. Then nodded. Of course. She wasn't sure if he suspected anything. That meant he still had control. Mark left for work, but he didn't go to the office. Instead, he parked 2 blocks from home and watched. 15 minutes later, Ryan arrived. Same casual entrance, like a man visiting his own place. They were bold. He recorded the timestamp, synced it to the hallway camera feed. Back in the hotel footage, Jessica had said, Mark's been acting weird lately. You think he knows? Ryan, doesn't matter. Once the dose hits, he won't have time to say anything. Mark whispered to the screen, You really should have waited till after I was dead. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was becoming the ghost in his own life, and he was watching the living bury themselves. Mark opened the kitchen cabinet slowly, like a man defusing a bomb. Each bottle and jar looked innocent: vitamins, supplements, protein powders, clean labels, trusted brands. Then he saw it. A glass dropper bottle with no label, tucked behind the turmeric. Something he didn't recognize. He carefully twisted it open and sniffed. No smell. Nothing familiar. He dabbed a trace on a paper towel. The edge turned a faint yellow-brown. Back in his office, he ran the image through a filter and uploaded it to a private forum of medical professionals. Within an hour, someone replied anonymously, Looks like a concentrated compound used in untraceable paralytics. Very hard to detect. Only used in specific types of poisonings. Mark didn't blink. He placed the bottle back exactly where it was. Didn't touch anything else. He wanted her to keep thinking he was asleep at the wheel. That night, he sat with Jessica on the couch, watching Netflix. She curled into his side, fingers tracing small circles on his arm. It had once comforted him. Now, it felt like being touched by venom. You've been quiet lately, she said. Just tired. You know me, when stress hits, I shut down. She nodded, satisfied. She always thought she was smarter than him. She was just louder. He leaned into the lie, resting his head on her shoulder. Her heartbeat under his ear, steady, smug. Mark opened one eye slightly and stared at the darkened TV screen, reflecting both of them. In the mirror, he saw the woman who was trying to kill him. And he saw himself, a man who had never wanted revenge in his life. Until now. He found the photo in an old shoebox while packing files from the attic. One of those small moments that shouldn't matter, but cracked something deeper. Jessica was 23, beaming, standing beside him at their wedding reception, holding a slice of cake. She had smeared frosting on his nose, and he'd laughed. That smile, it wasn't fake. Not then. Back then, she chose him. Not Ryan. Not money. Just him. So what changed? Downstairs, the hallway camera blinked red. She was back. He quickly hid the box, straightened the office, and logged into his work screen. "Hey," she called. "You want me to heat up dinner?" He paused. "Yeah, sure." The first betrayal hadn't been her affair. It was earlier. The year his mother died. Jessica had told him to stop grieving. "You're being dramatic," she'd said. She was sick for years. He'd buried the sting. Told himself she didn't know better. Then came the money lies, credit cards hidden, mystery charges explained away. "You don't trust me," she'd said, with watery eyes that always worked. Every time she lied, he forgave. But betrayal isn't always a knife. Sometimes it's a dull needle, inching in deeper day by day, until you bleed without realizing. He looked at the photo again, then tossed it into the fireplace. This wasn't just about cheating. It wasn't even about murder anymore. It was about 15 years of blind faith. He watched the flames eat away the image of their past. Then he whispered to himself, quiet, final. She doesn't get to rewrite my ending. It took 3 days to set up without raising suspicion. Mark ordered a high-quality voice recorder disguised as a car key fob, compact, long battery life, and nearly invisible. He didn't just place it in the house. That would be too risky. Instead, he waited. Jessica was getting ready for a work meeting, the same one she had twice a week, always dressed a little too well, with perfume she never wore around him anymore. Mark handed her the fob on her way out. "Hey, can you drop this off at the locksmith by 5? He asked casually. "It's for the spare car." She took it without a second glance. Sure. She never even asked what locksmith. By midnight, the recorder was back in his hands. He listened in his office, headphones on, door locked, every light off. His hand hovered over the volume dial as Jessica's voice came through the static. "He's still dragging around like a zombie." "I think the smaller doses are making it believable," she said. She sounded amused. Then Ryan's voice, smooth and smug. "You sure he hasn't caught on?" "If he had, he wouldn't be drinking smoothies every morning like a good little husband." She laughed. Mark's grip on the headphones tightened. "Ryan again. I can talk to my friend at the ER. He can backdate symptoms, help fudge a chart. If it looks like a brain clot, they won't even ask questions." Jessica paused. "Once the money hits, we leave. I don't care about the house. I just want a life without hiding." Ryan, with me. Jessica, with no guilt. The irony made Mark feel sick. No guilt. He saved the file, encrypted it, and uploaded a backup to the vault he'd created. Then he stared at the screen, eyes dark. She didn't even flinch when she said it. That night, Jessica was all sweetness. Dinner at home. Wine. Soft music playing through the Bluetooth speaker. She wore his favorite blue sweater, the one that always meant she was in a good mood. She poured his wine. He declined. "Still got that weird headache," he said. She smiled, kissed his forehead. "Poor thing." Then, without warning, she straddled him on the couch. "Maybe I can take your mind off it," she whispered. Mark stared into her eyes, wondering how someone could look so loving while planning murder. Her lips found his neck. Her hands moved with practiced affection. But her performance didn't move him anymore. His mind wasn't in the moment. It was remembering Ryan's voice just hours ago. If he had any clue, he'd be dead already. Jessica was kissing him like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't sleeping with another man. Like she hadn't already picked out a casket. He forced a smile, touched her cheek. "I'm lucky to have you," he said. She tilted her head, surprised. "What brought that on?" He shrugged. "Just don't want to take you for granted." She smiled again, kissed him harder. And just like that, the monster laid her head on his chest and fell asleep in his arms. Mark didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, his fingers lightly brushing her back. This woman, this stranger, who wore his ring and whispered sweet things while planning his death, she was the enemy. Not in some dramatic way, not a cartoon villain, but in the most terrifying form possible, the kind that pretends to love you while slowly replacing your life with a lie. Mark stayed awake until the sun cracked the horizon. His heart wasn't broken anymore. It was sharpening. Mark entered the lawyer's office with a quiet confidence. The kind that comes from clarity. The receptionist smiled. "Mr. Sullivan?" "Yeah," he said, handing over the paperwork. "For estate protection. Just in case." Inside, the attorney, a stout, silver-haired man named Dean Merrick, studied the documents. "Updating your will, moving assets, setting a medical power of attorney." Everything's covered except the reason. Mark nodded. I'm sick. I need to prepare. Dean looked over his glasses. There's no official diagnosis? Mark's voice didn't shake. Let's call it being cautious. Dean gave a slow nod. Smart man. Mark signed, initialed, sealed. In the new will, Jessica got nothing. Every account had a trigger. If anything happened to him, the insurance company would be notified of suspected foul play. Dean didn't know why. He didn't ask. That afternoon, Mark walked into his garage and opened a locked toolbox. Inside, he placed a sealed envelope with copies of the audio recording, emails, and the policy papers. On the front, in thick black marker, he wrote, "If I die suddenly, give this to Detective Moran, homicide." He locked the box. That evening, Jessica was chopping vegetables when she nicked her finger. Shit, she muttered. Mark was already beside her with a paper towel. You okay? He asked, voice soft. She nodded. Stupid knife slipped. He wrapped her finger. Blood soaked into the napkin. It looked innocent. But as she leaned into him, Mark stared at the knife on the counter. The same knife she used to cook for him. To feed him. To slowly kill him. Her blood had touched it now. And for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself one quiet thought. If she wants to play God with my life, then maybe I'll be the devil in hers. Jessica hummed as she folded laundry in the living room. Calm. Effortless. A woman without a care in the world. Mark sat across from her, pretending to scroll his phone, but watching her every movement. She doesn't know. She still thinks I'm a fool. Hey, she said suddenly, tossing one of his old t-shirts at him. Why do you keep this thing? It's full of holes. He smiled. Memory attached. She rolled her eyes and laughed. You're sentimental. She kissed his forehead as she walked past, habit, not affection. But that small moment made something inside Mark twist. He could still feel her lips hours later. Not out of love. Out of rage. She kissed him knowing she was poisoning him. She slept beside him with a funeral plan in motion. She had no idea he'd seen everything. Mark kept his act clean. He still took the smoothies, still gave sleepy smiles, still let her tuck him in at night like a dying man. But now he was tracking her phone. He was monitoring her browser history. He was recording every word. And she didn't suspect a thing. That night, as they lay in bed, Jessica turned toward him. If anything ever happened to you, she said softly, just know. I'd never stop loving you. Mark turned to her slowly. His eyes locked with hers. Promise, he whispered. She kissed his chest. Promise. He stared at the ceiling long after she fell asleep. His breathing was shallow, his chest heavy, but his mind was clear. She didn't know he was already writing her ending. Mark began playing the role of the dying husband. It started with fake dizziness, then memory lapses. Did I take my meds this morning? He asked at breakfast. Jessica looked at him strangely. You haven't taken any yet. Oh, he muttered, eyes wide. I thought I did. That night, he stood motionless in the kitchen for 10 straight minutes, staring at the fridge. When Jessica asked what was wrong, he blinked and said, What day is it? She called his doctor. He acted reluctant, quietly afraid. He knew what she was hoping for, that he'd collapse, that she could explain it away, that she could inherit his death. He gave her just enough to feed the illusion. Soon, Jessica was the one taking notes, watching him like a hawk. She began texting Ryan more urgently now. Mark intercepted the messages through CloneSim software. He's getting worse. He asked if it was Wednesday. It was. Soon. She was convinced it was working. Mark kept his movements slow, speech shaky. But when she left the house, he worked fast. He planted a second camera under the car dashboard. He ordered voice modulator software and a secure voice line. He hacked into her iCloud and downloaded every photo, every deleted file. He wanted her cornered from every angle. By the third day, Jessica began prepping his meals with quiet glee. Her tone changed. Less concern. More control. Don't forget your smoothie, she said one morning, placing it by his keyboard. It helps with focus, right? Mark nodded slowly. You always know what I need. She smiled. She thought she was winning. But Mark wasn't sick. He was sharpening the knife she thought he'd fall on. Ryan knows a guy, Jessica said over dinner, pouring Mark a glass of water. He's connected at the hospital, just in case you want to get a second opinion. Mark looked up from his plate. A second opinion on what? She hesitated. You've just seemed off lately. He smiled weakly. Yeah, you're right. Inside, his heart pounded. This was it, her next move. If he agreed to see Ryan's friend, they'd have access to medical records. Fake symptoms could be planted. A falsified diagnosis. Another angle of control. Mark played along. Sure. Set it up. Jessica's eyes lit up. Really? That's good. I just want to help you. That night, Mark took her phone while she showered. He accessed a hidden folder under a decoy app password guessed after watching her tap it 4 times. Inside were receipts for hidden hotel visits. Photos with Ryan. A voice memo labeled after. He played it. Jessica's voice. The house will sell quick. Everything's in my name already. After this, we're free. He copied the files. Sent a backup to Angela, Ryan's ex-wife, who was now feeding Mark everything she knew. Angela responded, she doesn't realize she's helping bury herself. Let me know when you want to trigger the fall. Mark stared at the message, then at the woman drying her hair across the hall. She looked like a normal wife. Calm. Trustworthy. She had no idea her world was about to burn from the inside out. Mark whispered, soon. The bar was almost empty. A dark booth in the corner. Low music, louder silence. Angela Hale sat with her back to the wall, her eyes locked on Mark. She looked tired, like someone who had trusted the wrong man too many times and paid for it. Mark slid a folder across the table. Inside were screenshots, emails, recordings. She didn't touch them right away. You're sure you want to do this? She asked. I'm not dying, Mark said flatly. But I need them to think I am. Angela finally looked down, flipping through the file. Her lips pressed tight. This is worse than I thought, she muttered. He used the same playbook with me. The charm, the poisoning, the slow isolation. My sister tried to warn me. She's dead now. Mark's breath caught. Angela didn't flinch. Car accident. The brakes were tampered with. No charges filed. But I know. She looked up. I never got justice. But you might. He leaned in. Then help me finish this. Angela took a deep breath. What do you need? Medical-grade sleeping agents. Something safe, traceable. Fake symptoms. And a way to make Ryan believe his cover's still clean. Angela's expression changed. She was no longer the ex-wife. She was the weapon Ryan forgot he created. I'll give you what you need. But once it starts, you don't get to pull back. Mark didn't blink. I'm way past pulling back. They shook hands. Two people, both scarred by betrayal, now bound by one shared goal. Turn the hunters into prey. Mark scheduled a second appointment with Dean Merrick, his lawyer. This time, he brought coffee and a deeper layer of secrets. They reviewed the updated will again, but this time, Mark asked for a new clause. If I die under suspicious circumstances, I want Jessica Sullivan and Ryan Hale to be automatically named persons of interest. And I want that directive sent to law enforcement, with evidence attached. Dean looked up slowly. You're not joking. Mark's voice was calm. No, Dean set down his pen. Mark, I don't know what's happening, but if you're afraid for your life, I'm not afraid, Mark interrupted. I'm preparing. They signed. Notarized. Scanned. Everything was now lined up. Jessica was fully removed from his estate. Life insurance redirect was pending. And if she made a move, anything, the consequences would unfold automatically. Later that night, Mark stared at the man in the mirror. His face was thinner, his eyes sharper, not because of stress, but purpose. Jessica walked in behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist. You're looking better, she whispered. He smiled at their reflection. Must be the smoothies. She chuckled and kissed his neck. Told you they'd help. As she left the room, Mark's eyes didn't leave the mirror. He was looking at a man who used to believe in honesty, in commitment. Now he believed in strategy. And Jessica? She was walking straight into her own legal trap and smiling. Mark had rigged the kitchen, living room, and bedroom with discrete pinhole cameras. The system ran through a private network, backed up nightly to a hidden drive. He'd studied hours of footage, Jessica mixing smoothies, checking her phone, deleting texts immediately after reading them. But tonight, she made a mistake. She was on the phone with Ryan, and she didn't know the living room camera's mic had just been upgraded. Friday, she whispered, curled into the couch. He's foggy all day after the dose. I'll double it. Mark froze, rewound. Played it again. I'll double it. The smoothness of her voice. The ease of her tone. She didn't even sound nervous. Just ready. I'll call your guy at the ER, Ryan replied. Make sure he's on shift. Mark hit pause. He had it, proof of intent to poison, date confirmed, method implied, co-conspirator involved. He clipped the audio, saved it to a hard drive, and uploaded it to Angela's shared server. Angela's message came in 5 minutes later. That's enough for preemptive costs. Want to trigger it now or wait for the kill attempt? Mark stared at the screen. He had enough to go to the police. But if he did it now, she'd walk. Deny. Lawyer up. Blame stress and misunderstandings. He needed the act, not just the plan. He typed back. Wait. We catch her in the act. Friday. He looked at the screen. Jessica now humming, texting, sipping wine. She thought she was untouchable. She didn't know that every camera, every wire, every saved file was a nail in her own coffin. And Mark? He was done being the victim. He was becoming the executioner, with the whole world watching. Thursday night, the day before the storm, Mark stood in the hallway just outside the kitchen, the hallway camera recording silently over his shoulder. Jessica was seated at the table, a bottle of red wine half empty in front of her. Her laptop open. She didn't notice him yet. On the screen, a funeral planning site. Everpeace Memorials, quote estimate generator. Mark's pulse slowed. Jessica typed numbers into the fields with mechanical precision. Male, age 39. Natural causes. No religious ceremony. Basic casket. Cremation option selected. He took one slow step backward and ducked out of sight. She was pricing out his death. He returned to his office, shaking. It wasn't panic. It was cold, clear anger. He pulled up his video feed and watched her finish the quote. She even selected floral arrangements. Back in the kitchen, she made a phone call. Hi. Yes. I was wondering if your services include home pickup in the event of an unattended death. Mark hit record on the phone line monitor. Jessica continued, soft and collected. My husband's been unwell. I think it's only a matter of time. I just want to be ready. She ended the call with a cheerful, thank you so much. Then she closed the laptop and poured herself more wine like it was just another Thursday. Mark stared at the screen, silent. He clicked into his evidence archive, labeled the video, planning his funeral, night before. Angela messaged him 2 minutes later after receiving the clip. She's ready to bury you. Good thing we're about to bury her first. Friday. Jessica decorated the living room in soft blues and silvers. Balloons. Streamers. The scent of vanilla cake drifted through the air. She hummed as she set the table with 2 plates and 2 wine glasses. Happy birthday to you, she whispered, lighting a single candle. Mark entered slowly, playing his part. Loose shoulders, hazy eyes. Slight limp. He looked fragile. She kissed him on the cheek. You're still my handsome man, she said. He gave a weak smile. You didn't have to do all this. She handed him a glass of wine. You deserve to feel special. He glanced at the smoothie on the counter. Already prepared. Already poisoned. I'll take that in a bit, he said, nodding at it. Still feeling a little off. No problem, she smiled. Take your time. Mark sat down. Camera 3, tucked in the bookshelf, captured the full scene. Angela was watching from a live relay across town. Everything was time-stamped. Jessica cut the cake. Mark forced a bite, then leaned back. My head's swimming, he muttered. Jessica's eyes flickered. Do you want to lie down? He nodded slowly. Yeah, maybe just for a bit. She helped him up, gently guiding him toward the bedroom. Her touch was almost loving. Almost. Inside the room, she helped him into bed, pulled the blanket to his chest. I'll clean up, she said softly. You just rest. Mark let his eyes close. Footsteps faded away. Then he opened one eye. His pulse steady. He tapped his smartwatch twice. Camera 4 activated. Live feed. Jessica returned to the kitchen, grabbed the smoothie, walked back to the bedroom, this time with a new glass. Drink this, she whispered, brushing his hair back. You'll feel better soon. He opened his eyes just enough to see the shadow of the glass. And just like that, she offered him his own death gift wrapped in fake love. He took the glass, smiled faintly, then knocked it over by accident. Oh, he muttered. Damn. Sorry. Jessica froze. And for the first time, Just barely. She looked nervous. Mark's phone buzzed under the mattress the moment Jessica left the room again. Angela's message lit up the screen. It's done. I ran the name from Ryan's old files. You need to hear this. Mark quietly left the bedroom, headed into his locked office, and called Angela. Her voice was urgent. Her name was Danielle Reese. Ryan's ex-fiancée. Died in a freak fall at the Canyon Trail in New Mexico. Case closed as accidental, no foul play. But here's the thing, she paused. He took out a $500,000 policy on her 6 weeks before the trip. Mark felt the temperature drop. Angela continued, and that doctor Jessica wanted you to see? The one for a second opinion? He was the attending on Danielle's autopsy report. Mark's jaw clenched. This wasn't Jessica's idea, Angela said. It's Ryan. He's been doing this for years. Women, money, vanishing acts. Jessica's just his latest puppet. No, Mark said quietly. She's not a puppet. She's a willing partner. He opened his laptop, synced the birthday video, and clipped the moment she tried to hand him the smoothie. Frame by frame. He slowed it. Jessica's hand didn't tremble. She didn't blink. She expected it to be over in minutes. Angela spoke again. We bring this to the cops now. It's enough. But if we wait for Ryan's next step, we might catch both of them clean. Mark stared at the paused frame. His wife. Beautiful. Calm. Holding a glass of slow death with a soft smile. He said, we wait. Angela agreed. Let her think she still has control. Mark closed the file, eyes dark. Tomorrow, he'd disappear. And when he came back, they'd both be in handcuffs or in the ground. The next morning, Jessica found Mark hunched over the kitchen sink, glass of water trembling in his hand. I don't feel right, he mumbled. Jessica rushed over, wrapping an arm around him. You're okay. You just need to lie down. His eyes were foggy, deliberately slow. What if something's really wrong? She hesitated. Should I call someone? No hospital. He shook his head. Not yet. She watched him, unsure for the first time. Mark leaned against the counter, breathing heavy. Jess, if I don't make it, she grabbed his arm. Don't say that. I need to ask you something, he said. If I died tomorrow, would you be okay? Jessica swallowed, hard. Of course not. You sure? He asked, eyes barely open. You don't look scared. Jessica's hand tightened on his arm. You're tired, that's all. He nodded slowly. Yeah, tired. He collapsed to the floor, softly, carefully. Enough to scare her, not enough to hurt himself. She gasped, dropping beside him. Mark, look at me. His eyes fluttered, then closed. He heard her whispering frantically. A door opened, then closed. Her footsteps, running out to grab her phone. Maybe to call Ryan. He opened one eye. She bought it. He crawled to the cabinet, pulled out a small pouch, and swallowed 2 activated charcoal pills, Angela's idea, in case any actual poison was slipped in that day's smoothie. Then he lay still again, timing his breath. By the time she returned, he was cold and still. Mark. Her voice trembled. Mark stayed silent. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply whispered, okay, like someone solving a riddle out loud. And that told him everything he needed to know. Jessica waited 3 hours. She checked his pulse once, whispered his name twice, then sat silently in the kitchen, tapping her nails on the glass tabletop. At 3:08 p.m., she made the call. Hi. Yes, my husband. I think he's not breathing. The dispatcher began asking questions. She answered calmly. Too calmly. Mark lay in the bedroom, still and composed. The house filled with quiet movements, Jessica opening the door, pacing once, straightening a pillow. She was staging, exactly as Angela had predicted. By the time the paramedics arrived, Mark had already slipped out the back door with Angela's help into her waiting car 3 blocks away. His pulse normal, his eyes sharp. Inside the house, Jessica led the medics in. I just found him this way. He'd been feeling off all week. The paramedics surrounded the bed. One checked for signs. One watched her closely. Then came the twist. Angela had slipped a small, timed capsule into the back of the mattress. Inside it, a heat sensor and a hidden tracker that fed real-time data to Mark's phone. He knew when they touched the sheets, when they lifted his body. The plan was working. Jessica sobbed on cue as the stretcher rolled out. empty. She didn't know it, but the bag was filled with weighted gear. Just enough to sell it. Angela texted, "They bought it. She thinks you're gone." Mark looked out the window of the car, watching the street vanish behind him. Tomorrow, the obituary would run. A private memorial would be scheduled. And Jessica would believe she'd won. But the real show hadn't started yet. The podcast host had the voice of a seasoned storyteller, slow, crisp, just a touch theatrical. Mark sat in the recording studio, put over his head, face unseen behind the glass. "I'm not a murderer," he said into the mic, "but if you read the emails, if you listen to the tape, you'd swear I should be." The host leaned in. "So why are you here, Mark?" He exhaled. "Because I died yesterday, and my wife doesn't know I'm still alive." Silence. The kind that grabs attention. The host nodded once. "Let's begin." For the next 40 minutes, Mark unraveled the story on record, cutting names, blurring details, but laying out the bones: betrayal, poisoning, fake death, legal backups, and the hidden trap. Every word was calculated. Angela had arranged the session as a public failsafe. If anything happened to Mark, this episode would air immediately. Titled, Episode 117, My Wife Planned My Funeral, but I Beat Her to It. Back at home, Jessica was pouring herself a drink. Relaxed, maybe even excited. She had no idea her husband had just exposed her to an audience of over 800,000 true crime subscribers. Mark's final line in the podcast, "She thought she buried me, but the grave she dug is hers now." He removed the headphones. The host looked stunned. "You're not going to air this yet?" Mark shook his head. "Not yet. But soon." He left through the back door, unseen. A dead man walking with a plan. Jessica stood before the mirror, rehearsing grief. She dabbed at her dry eyes, paused, tilted her chin. Too cold. She blinked faster. Let her voice quiver. "Mark was everything to me." She paused again. No tears. Just the memory of what tears should look like. She tried again. Angela watched the footage from her apartment across town. The bathroom camera had a clear shot of the mirror. Mark had installed it 2 weeks before, hidden behind the light fixture. Jessica ran her fingers through her hair. He went so fast. Angela muted the audio. "She's not crying," she muttered. Mark sat beside her, arms crossed. "She never does." Later that morning, Jessica walked into the precinct wearing black. Detective Moran greeted her politely. "We just have a few follow-up questions, Mrs. Sullivan." She gave a weak smile. "Of course. Anything I can do. Sorry for your loss." She placed a tissue to her cheek and nodded. Mark watched the body cam footage live from Angela's laptop. He had someone on the inside now, a quiet favor owed from a client he once saved from a cyber disaster. The detective began casually. "Your husband was insured, correct?" Jessica nodded. "Yes. Through his job. And you're the primary beneficiary?" "Yes," she answered carefully. "You'll be contacted for paperwork soon." "Routine, of course." Jessica offered a soft, "Thank you." Mark leaned forward. "Wait for it," Moran added. "Just odd that we couldn't get a clear cause of death. I'm sure the toxicology will clarify." Jessica froze, just for half a second, then smiled again. "I hope so." Angela clicked pause. "Did you see that twitch?" Mark nodded slowly. "She's worried." He smiled for the first time that day. She should be. The memorial service was small, private, and hollow. Jessica chose a quiet chapel near the outskirts of town. Only close friends and a handful of Mark's coworkers showed up, most too stunned by the news to question the speed of it all. She wore a simple black dress, veil draped over her face. The kind of grief that looked expensive. The closed casket sat at the front of the room, empty inside, filled only with weighted sandbags beneath a folded flag. Angela had helped build the false death certificate, the funeral vendor, the delivery records. All airtight. Mark sat in an unmarked sedan outside the chapel, watching the live feed from a drone parked on the roof. Jessica stepped up to the podium. Her voice cracked on cue. "Mark was the kindest man I've ever known. I didn't deserve him." Angela scoffed at the screen. "At least she got one thing right." Jessica continued. "He loved quietly, lived humbly, and now he rests." Mark leaned forward. "Play the audio." Angela unmuted. Jessica's words echoed from the chapel speakers. "He's in a better place now." The crowd bowed their heads. Some sniffled, but not Jessica. She stepped down with dry eyes and perfectly timed sorrow. After the service, she greeted guests one by one. Handshakes, nods, the grieving widow routine. And just before she entered the waiting car, she whispered to someone on the phone, "It's done. He's gone. Meet me tonight." Mark tapped the screen, froze the frame. Gotcha. Midnight. Jessica entered room 403 at the same Marriott where this all began. Ryan was already inside, shirtless, glass of whiskey in hand. He grinned. "So it's real. He's gone." She nodded, dropping her purse. Dead and buried. Smooth as silk. Mark watched the live camera feed from Angela's apartment, his jaw set. Room 403 was now wired, audio, video, and a synced live stream ready to go viral if needed. Jessica poured herself a drink, toasting the air. "Here's to new beginnings." Ryan chuckled. "To us." Then he leaned close. "So when do we cash in?" Jessica hesitated. "Processing starts next week." He nodded. "And the house?" She shrugged. "Mark, it's hot. It'll go fast." Mark watched closely, tracking her tone, her pacing, her subtle nervousness. "Do you think anyone suspects?" Ryan asked. Jessica exhaled. "I don't know. Maybe. But without a body scan or autopsy, there's no proof." That was her fatal miscalculation. Because Mark had all the proof. Angela clipped the latest video and sent it to an encrypted drive labeled "Conspiracy to Commit." Final phase, Mark picked up his phone and called his lawyer. "It's time," he said. "Ready to pull the lever?" the lawyer asked. Mark's voice didn't waver. "Tomorrow morning, I'm making the first drop." He ended the call and stared at the screen, Jessica now kissing Ryan with slow, practiced heat. He whispered to himself, "Enjoy your last night of freedom." Monday morning. Denver News Channel 6 opened with breaking headlines. Local husband dies suddenly, now questions surface around his disappearance. Mark sat in a rental apartment 2 counties away, dressed in joggers and a plain hoodie. His face was shaven clean. New glasses. New haircut. He was invisible. Angela slid him her tablet. The news anchor was reading live from the teleprompter. Mark Sullivan, a 39-year-old IT engineer, was pronounced dead last Friday. However, police are now reviewing inconsistencies in the medical reporting and lack of an official body scan. Sources close to the investigation say a digital trail of unusual financial and medical activity has raised red flags. Jessica's photo flashed on screen. Poised. Elegant. Under it, wife speaks out on husband's sudden passing. Angela raised an eyebrow. She wanted attention. Now she has it. Mark didn't blink. She's about to wish she never got it. Jessica had given a short interview the night before, now trending online. "We were just starting to talk about a family," she said, her voice soft. "I can't believe he's gone." But the interviewer leaned in, pushing. No autopsy. No formal declaration. And the insurance paperwork was pre-filled. Some people are asking, "Did you know something the rest of us didn't?" Jessica smiled tightly. "I don't know how to respond to that." Angela turned the tablet back toward Mark. "You want to go in now?" He shook his head. "Not yet." He stared at the paused screen. Jessica's frozen face, the start of her unraveling. He whispered, "Let her sweat." Angela poured coffee into a chipped mug. She didn't speak until she sat across from Mark. "I think you should see this." She slid him a manila folder. Inside, photos, documents, names, all tied to Ryan Hale. 2 previous girlfriends. 1 missing. 1 dead. Both had life insurance policies filed weeks before their accidents. 1 died in a cabin fire. No foul play found. The second disappeared during a weekend trip, never reported missing. Angela leaned back. "It's a pattern. He finds women with financial stability, manipulates them, uses them, and either stages the accident himself or turns them into killers." Mark studied the files. "He grooms them into believing it's their idea." Angela nodded. "Jessica thinks she's leading. She's not. Ryan's been doing this long before her." Mark clenched his jaw. "So he's the spider. She's just the web." Angela hesitated. "She's not innocent. But she's not the mastermind." Mark stared at the photos again. The faces. The eerily similar handwriting on insurance forms. All signed digitally. All through the same third-party broker. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was preventative action. How many more women? He asked. Angela shook her head. Could be 5. Could be 10. Mark stood slowly. She's going to prison, he said. But he's not just going to fall. Angela frowned. What are you saying? Mark's eyes were cold now. I'm going to drag him down. Tuesday morning. Jessica arrived at the bank with her sunglasses on and posture perfect. The clerk greeted her. Mrs. Sullivan, your appointment? She nodded. Yes, just here to check on my husband's estate vault. The clerk led her down to the secured access room. You're listed as emergency contact. Contents haven't been reviewed since your husband's passing. Jessica entered the vault alone. The camera above the door flickered. What she didn't know, Angela had access to the feed. Mark watched live from the back of a van nearby, heart steady. Jessica opened the box. Inside, a thick brown envelope. One word written on it in black ink. Read, she hesitated. Then opened it. Her eyes scanned page after page. Screenshots of emails, photo stills from room 403, audio transcripts, lawyer documentation, and a notarized statement. If I die under suspicious circumstances, this box is to be opened and given to Detective Moran of the Denver Police Department. Jessica dropped the folder. Her hands shook. Her face, caught on camera, changed. Not grief, not rage, but pure fear. Angela zoomed in. Got her. Mark stared at the live feed. Now she knows. Angela smirked. Think she'll run. She'll try, he said. But not tonight. Jessica slammed the box shut, grabbed her purse, and stormed out of the vault, straight into the arms of 2 plainclothes officers who weren't there by accident. Mark whispered one word as the screen faded to black. Checkmate. The video hit social media like a grenade. Angela had edited the footage masterfully, clean cuts, time-stamped overlays, audio clarity boosted. The title? She tried to kill her husband. He let her think she did. It opened with Jessica preparing the smoothie. Cut to her whispering over the phone. I'll double the dose. Then the scene of the fake memorial. The cold smirk. The whisper to Ryan. It's done. He's gone. Within 2 hours, the video had 280,000 views. Within 6, it crossed 1 million. News outlets picked it up. Podcasts rushed to cover the story. Hashtags trended. Hashtag Dead Man Revenge, hashtag Smoothie Widow, hashtag Ryan the Reaper. Jessica's face was everywhere. At first, she denied it. It's deepfake footage, she told a local reporter outside her condo. None of it's real. But the audio was authenticated. The emails traced. The footage sourced from multiple angles. The pressure cracked quickly. By nightfall, protesters showed up outside her building with posters that read, "You planned his funeral. He planned your downfall." Mark watched the chaos from the safety of a downtown hotel room, hidden behind tinted windows. Angela sat across from him. We could stop now. She's ruined. Mark shook his head. Not until they both are. He pulled up the next file. A folder labeled, Ryan Hale, Pattern of Predators. It contained every piece of evidence they'd compiled. Insurance fraud, deceased exes, forged documents, and the contact info for a journalist eager to crack her next big story. Angela leaned back. You're turning this into a war. Mark replied, calm and cold. No, I'm just showing people who the enemy really is. Jenna Lively was known for blowing up stories. Her podcast, Truth Trigger, was one of the fastest-growing crime shows on Spotify, sleek production, sharp interviews, and a noble approach to liars. Angela handed her a sealed drive. Everything's on there. Audio, video, digital receipts. But it's more than a cheating wife story. This is about predators, murder, greed. Jenna raised an eyebrow. And this source, the husband, he's really alive? Angela nodded. He's in the room next door. But you don't get him unless you tell the story right. Jenna reviewed the footage in silence, her eyes widening at each scene. This isn't just a podcast, she muttered. This is a docuseries waiting to happen. 2 days later, Truth Trigger dropped a special 2-hour episode titled, The Smoothie Widow, How One Man Faked His Death to Expose a Killer Couple. It opened with Jenna's signature intro. Mark Sullivan was supposed to be dead. Instead, he decided to watch his wife bury him, so he could bury the truth about her and her lover. The world listened. Mark's voice, altered slightly for anonymity, guided listeners through the betrayal. The recordings played out one after another, each damning moment delivered like a bullet. The public responded with rage, awe, and obsession. TikTok creators reenacted scenes from the audio. Reddit lit up with threads. Was this the greatest revenge plan ever executed? Jessica's phone was seized. Her email subpoenaed. And Ryan? He was next. The news broke at 9:12 a.m. Local paramedic linked to multiple suspicious deaths. New evidence uncovered in explosive podcast episode. By 9:20, Ryan Hale's apartment was empty. His phone pinged near the I-25 freeway. Jessica, under house arrest, tried calling him 6 times. No answer. She left voicemails, calm, desperate, angry, pleading. Mark listened to them all through a cloned cloud server. Ryan, pick up the phone. This is blowing up way too fast. We need to figure this out. Don't leave me alone in this. Ryan didn't care. He had seen what happened to his exes. He knew the signs. Jessica was a liability now. Mark and Angela were already ahead of him. A private investigator they'd hired picked up footage from a highway gas station. Ryan changing clothes in a bathroom, buying a burner phone, paying cash. He was heading south, probably toward Mexico. Angela sent the file to Jenna. The podcast immediately updated with a follow-up. Ryan Hale is on the run. Police are urging anyone with tips to come forward. If you see him, do not approach. Mark sat back in the hotel chair, watching the country rally against the man who once held his death in his hands. Ryan thought he could disappear. He didn't realize Mark had left breadcrumbs just big enough to be found. A money trail. A false lead. A tracker hidden in the lining of Ryan's emergency responder bag planted weeks ago during one of his overnight shifts. Mark's phone buzzed. Angela read the alert aloud. Ping from El Paso, Texas. Mark stood. Let's go. Angela smirked. You want to be there when they catch him? Mark grabbed his jacket. No, he paused at the door, then added, I want him to see me before the handcuffs go on. The sun was just rising over El Paso when Ryan Hale stepped out of the motel room in a stolen baseball cap and mirrored sunglasses. He looked like any other guy traveling solo, tired, unshaven, anonymous. He didn't notice the unmarked car across the street, or the man sitting inside with a camera in his lap and a calm, practiced stillness. Mark. Through the tinted window, Mark watched the predator stroll down the sidewalk, coffee in hand, whistling like a man who thought he'd slipped through fate's fingers. He didn't know the tracker in his duffel had been pinging his location every 20 minutes. He didn't know Mark had coordinated with the local PD. And he definitely didn't know about the sting already in motion. When Ryan turned the corner to the bus depot, 3 officers stepped out, weapons drawn. Ryan Hale, one said sharply, on the ground. Now. Ryan froze. His hands twitched. He considered running. That's when he saw him. Across the street. On the bench. Calm. Cold. Mark. Their eyes met. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. It was like seeing a ghost. Mark didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply stared. Ryan slowly dropped to his knees, then to his stomach. The cuffs clicked shut behind him. As the cops hauled him to his feet, Ryan shouted over their shoulders. You faked your death. You sick bastard. Mark stood and walked to the curb. No words. Just presence. He let the moment stretch, let Ryan feel what it was like to lose control, finally. Then he spoke, voice low and clear. You should have finished what you started. Back in Denver, the headlines exploded. Paramedic Ryan Hale arrested in Texas, linked to murder plot, multiple suspicious deaths. Jessica sat in her apartment surrounded by silence and surveillance. Her phone had been confiscated. Her lawyer was en route. Her world? Shrinking by the hour. She watched the news on loop, Ryan in handcuffs, wild-eyed, screaming. The segment played again and again. She tried to hold it together. But when the anchor said the words suspected serial offender, she lost it. The knock came just after 2 p.m. Detective Morin stepped inside with quiet authority. We need to talk, he said. Jessica folded her arms, defensive. So I'm guilty because I'm grieving? No, Morin said. You're guilty because we have footage of you plotting your husband's death, and your boyfriend just flipped on you. Her breath caught. What? He says you manipulated him. Says this was all your plan. Jessica's eyes widened, lips trembling. He's lying. He made me do everything. Morin didn't respond. She leaned forward, voice cracking. I didn't mean for anything to happen. I just wanted to be happy. He was cold, distant. I was lonely. It wasn't supposed to go that far. You signed off on the dosage, Morin said flatly. You picked the funeral home before he even died. Tears streamed now. I was scared. Ryan said he'd leave me if I didn't go through with it. Morin stood. That's a jury's call now. Jessica clutched his arm, begging. Please, don't let this end like this. I didn't mean it. Morin pulled away. You meant every word of it. We have them recorded. She dropped to the floor, shaking. Mark watched the scene live from his phone. For the first time, she looked genuinely broken. But it was too late. Mark sat alone in the empty apartment that had become his war room. The lights were off. Only the glow of multiple monitors lit the room, each one showing a different folder, each file stamped, dated, and stacked in the correct order. One folder labeled Final Phase blinked at him. He clicked it open. Dozens of clips began to autoplay in sequence. Jessica whispering in the hotel room. Ryan laughing on speakerphone. The smoothie glass sliding across the table. The fake memorial. The kiss between conspirators in room 403. Mark had watched these moments 100 times. But tonight, he let them play without interruption. No pausing. No scrubbing. Just watching. A slow exhale left his lungs. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't even satisfied. He was tired. But he had to finish it. He opened the editing software. Angela had already done most of the cut. Mark added the final segment, a side-by-side of Jessica's staged tears at the memorial and her laughing in the hotel just days earlier. He added the caption, one face for the world. One face for the kill. He clicked export. Angela's message buzzed through a second later. Final episode queued. Going live at 7 a.m. Mark closed the laptop slowly. Tomorrow, the whole world would see the story, not just as a twisted headline or a courtroom case. They would see it through his eyes. Every betrayal, every lie, every reason he had to burn them both down without lifting a single weapon. He whispered into the dark, let them watch the truth unravel. The cuffs were cold. Jessica flinched as the steel bit into her wrists. You have the right to remain silent, the officer said, voice flat. She didn't cry. Not this time. The press was already outside her apartment. Flashes exploded as soon as the door opened. A dozen microphones were thrust forward, voices clashing. Did you really poison your husband? Is it true he faked his death to trap you? Where's Ryan now? Jessica kept her eyes down as she was loaded into the back of the cruiser, her designer sunglasses failing to shield the collapse behind her lips. Inside the precinct, Detective Morin led her through the back hall. We've got enough to bury you with or without Ryan's confession, he said. Jessica broke her silence. He manipulated me. Morin stopped walking, looked her square in the face. Lady, you were pricing out your husband's casket before he stopped breathing. Her voice cracked. He lied to me. Ryan promised. Morin cut her off. He promised a lot of women. One's dead. One's missing. One's on record now. She blinked. You didn't just get caught, Morin added. You got watched. Every step. Every whisper. She sat in the interrogation room, staring at the silver table. Across town, Mark stood silently in the courthouse lobby. Angela approached. She's in. Ryan's next. Mark nodded. They've had center stage long enough. He adjusted his tie. For the first time since this began, he was walking in through the front door, alive, visible, and ready to end it. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, camera crews, podcast hosts. It felt like a live-stream documentary playing out in real time. Jessica sat to the left of the judge, dressed modestly in a beige suit. Her hair pinned, her face pale. Ryan was seated 2 chairs away, refusing to look at her. She glanced at him once. He didn't blink, not even when the prosecution's first exhibit played across the screen. Jessica's voice echoed through the courtroom. I'll double the dose. He's too out of it to notice. Gasps filled the gallery. Mark sat at the back, calm, silent, watching. He wasn't testifying today. Not yet. The prosecution was starting with the recordings, each one verified, clean, inescapable. Ryan shifted as his own voice filled the room. I can talk to my guy at the ER. He can fudge the records. The jury stared at the screen in disbelief. Jessica folded her arms tight, hiding the way her hands trembled. Then came the funeral footage. Her smiling. The whisper to Ryan, "It's done. He's gone. Meet me tonight." The courtroom went still. Mark could feel the moment the illusion shattered. For the press, the jury, even for the people who once thought Jessica was just another grieving widow. The prosecutor turned to the room. No body. No autopsy. No explanation. Just a fast-tracked funeral and $1 million payout scheduled within days. If that's not premeditation, what is? Jessica looked away. Ryan sat motionless, eyes burning. But Mark wasn't watching them now. He was watching the jury. They believed him. They saw the truth. It came faster than expected. 3 days of testimony. 2 days of deliberation. By the 6th day, the jury re-entered the courtroom. Jessica sat upright. Her lawyer whispered something she didn't hear. Ryan looked bored, detached. His hands folded like he was just waiting out a long flight. The foreperson stood. On the charge of attempted murder in the 1st degree, we find the defendant guilty. A pause. Gasps. Jessica blinked slowly, lips parting. The judge didn't wait. Sentencing to follow. Bail denied. Ryan's turn. On the charges of conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and obstruction of justice, we find the defendant guilty. He smirked, shook his head. Figures. Jessica turned to him. You said, he cut her off cold. I said what I had to. 2 bailiffs stepped forward. Ryan stood willingly. Jessica didn't move. I didn't mean it, she muttered. The judge didn't acknowledge her. I loved him, she whispered. But her voice was lost in the echo of the gavel. Mark stepped outside into the cold morning air. Camera crews swarmed, questions fired, but he said nothing. Angela joined him. It's done. Mark looked up at the gray sky. No, he said. It's over. There's a difference. 3 weeks later, Mark stood at the edge of a cliff trail near Boulder, overlooking the valley. It was quiet, crisp, free. He tossed a small, black flash drive into the canyon. The last copy. He didn't need it anymore. The courtroom, the headlines, the podcasts, they were behind him now. Jessica had been sentenced to 35 years. Ryan got life, no parole. Angela had gone back to her job. Still sharp, still standing. She called him once a week. He always answered. But today, he came alone. He took a breath and let it out slowly. This wasn't closure. Not exactly. There was no wrapping something like this up in a bow. But it was something else. Peace. Real peace. He turned and began walking back toward the car, the wind brushing his face, the past fading just slightly behind him. His phone buzzed once. A number he didn't recognize. The voicemail transcribed on screen. I read your story. You saved my life. Thank you. Mark smiled. Not big, but enough. He whispered. Then it wasn't for nothing. Inside a gray-walled federal prison, Jessica Sullivan sat under harsh fluorescent light, staring at a blank notebook page. Her cellmate slept on the top bunk, snoring quietly. The guards had finished count. The facility was dead silent. Jessica picked up the pen and began to write. I wasn't always this person. I didn't mean to become a villain. She stopped. Even now, her instinct was to spin it, to soften the sharp edges of her choices. She looked around her cell, bare walls, a metal sink, a toilet bolted to the corner. Her new world. Every day since sentencing, she'd received one letter, one reminder, sometimes from strangers, sometimes from people she knew in high school. The tone was always the same. You're the woman who tried to kill the nicest guy in the world. One letter had come with nothing inside except a copy of her own courtroom photo and a single word scrawled in red ink. Remember. Jessica slammed the notebook shut. Across the yard, a news report played faintly from a rec room TV. The Smoothie Widow, true crime docuseries confirmed by Netflix. She clenched her jaw. The world wasn't forgetting. It was documenting her. Her punishment wasn't just prison. It was being reduced to a cautionary tale, a warning in someone else's story. She lay back on the bed, eyes wide open in the dark. And for the first time, she truly understood. Mark didn't kill her. He made her live with it. Mark visited a grave that didn't belong to anyone he knew personally. The name carved into the stone, Danielle Reese, 1986 to 2017, she was loved. She is missed. He placed a single white rose on the stone, stood quietly, then spoke. I'm sorry it took this long. Angela had given him the full story. Danielle had been engaged to Ryan Hale. Her family never believed her death was accidental, but they couldn't prove it. Now they knew. Mark left a small note inside a sealed bag beside the grave. No signature, just a message. He's behind bars. And someone finally saw you. On the way out, he passed an elderly woman near the gate. Danielle's mother, maybe. She didn't recognize him. He didn't speak. But as she walked past him toward the headstone, she paused. Her eyes flicked to the rose. The note. She stared at it for a long time. Mark didn't look back. Some echoes never die. Some plans keep hurting long after they're over. But this one was done. And justice, for once, wasn't just a word. Angela handed Mark a thick envelope. It came from the county lockup, she said. I didn't open it. Mark knew the handwriting. Jessica. He didn't open it either. He lit the fire pit in his backyard. Calm night. Breeze just strong enough to make the flames dance. He stood silently, staring down at the letter. Her last words, whatever they were. A plea. A curse. Maybe both. He fed the envelope into the fire and watched it curl. Then he pulled a fresh sheet of paper and sat at the patio table. He began to write, not to Jessica, but to himself. You were never weak. You were never naive. You loved. And when they tried to turn your love into your grave, you walked out of it alive. You didn't seek vengeance. You sought truth. You found it. Now, go live. He folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, and wrote one word on the front. Done. He burned that too, then sat in the dark, letting the quiet finally feel like peace. 6 months later. Seattle. Mark stood in front of a class of 30 high school students, their laptops open, their eyes curious. Cybersecurity isn't just about locking doors, he said, walking the aisle. It's about knowing who has the keys and what they're really trying to unlock. The kids nodded. One jotted something down. He clicked a slide on the projector. Trust is access. Access is power. Power can be stolen until you take it back. After class, a student stayed behind. Mr. Sullivan, she said shyly, were you the guy from that podcast? Mark smiled gently. Maybe. She hesitated. My mom went through something. Your story helped her leave. Mark nodded. Then I'm glad I told it. She left. Mark stood in the empty room, sunlight pouring in through the tall windows. His phone buzzed. A text from Angela. Foundation approved. Nonprofit registry finalized. We're live. He replied, let's help the next one survive. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding. For himself. For others. For anyone who ever trusted the wrong person and lived to take their story back. The building wasn't flashy, just 2 stories of glass and brick nestled in the heart of downtown Seattle. But inside, it buzzed with quiet purpose. The front desk sign read, Shield Support. Healing. Investigation. Empowerment. Legal defense. Mark stood just inside the lobby, watching volunteers sort through case folders. Survivors sat quietly in counseling rooms. Some came alone. Some brought shadows with them. Angela joined him, tablet in hand. 17 intake calls this week. 2 from out of state. Word spreading. Mark nodded. That fast? Angela smiled. When you speak truth, people listen. A young woman approached the front desk. Shaky hands. Dark circles under her eyes. A volunteer met her with quiet kindness and led her inside. Mark didn't approach. He didn't need to. He just stood still, watching something rare unfold, a place born from pain, but made for protection. This was the real revenge, not ruin. Rebuilding. Mark received an unexpected letter at the foundation. The return address was from Danielle Reese' mother. He opened it slowly, scanning the tight, slanted handwriting. You didn't know her, but you saw her. That means everything. The world forgot her face. But now she's part of a story that saved others. You made her life matter again. I hope you found peace. She would have liked you. Mark exhaled, folded the letter gently. Later that night, he framed it, hung it in his office, right above the desk. Angela stopped by, paused when she saw it. She'd be proud, she said. Mark nodded. She deserved justice. Angela looked at him, something soft in her eyes. So did you. Mark looked around the room, papers, whiteboards, stories still waiting to be told. Let's give it to everyone we can, he said. The prison visiting room buzzed with quiet tension. Mark sat at the far end of the glass partition, waiting. He wasn't nervous, just curious. Jessica entered wearing beige prison scrubs. Her hair was shorter now, darker. Her eyes found him instantly. She picked up the phone. So did he. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she asked, "Why did you come?" Mark studied her face. "To see who you became." Jessica looked down. "I didn't want to become her." "You were always her," Mark said evenly. "You just stopped hiding it." Her voice cracked. "I loved you." "I did." He didn't flinch. "No. You loved the version of me who didn't ask questions." She swallowed hard. "I'm not here for closure," Mark continued. "I'm not here to forgive you." She nodded slowly, eyes shining. "I'm here to say thank you." Jessica blinked. "For what?" He leaned in slightly. "You tried to bury me, but you gave me a reason to live louder than I ever have." He stood, placed the phone back in the receiver. Jessica stared through the glass as he walked away, quiet, composed, untouchable. For the first time, she saw it clearly. He was never the one who was lost. On a rainy Sunday morning, Mark walked into a quiet bookstore just off a narrow downtown street. He moved past the travel guides and poetry shelves until he found it, face out on the new nonfiction wall. "I replied to the wrong email. A true story of betrayal, survival, and taking my life back." Mark Sullivan. He ran his fingers along the spine. The cover was simple, clean. A black and white photo of a hand pulling off a wedding ring. Inside the front flap, he was supposed to die. She planned his funeral. But he didn't just survive. He turned the story upside down. The clerk behind the counter recognized him but didn't say a word, just gave a quiet nod. Outside, people were already walking by with copies in their arms. Some reading, some crying. Mark stepped out into the drizzle. Not as a victim, not as a hero, just a man who refused to stay buried. And the world was finally listening. The Shield Foundation's third community event was packed. Rows of chairs filled the old library auditorium, people leaning forward, hanging on to every word from the panelists. Mark stood at the side of the stage, scanning the crowd. Some faces looked like his once had, tired, distant, worn by silence. Others held something more. Hope. Angela nudged him. "You're up." He stepped to the podium. No script, just truth. "When I built this foundation," he began, "I didn't know if anyone would show up. Laughter. Light. Real. I thought my story was too specific. Too twisted. Too rare." He looked out at them. "But betrayal isn't rare. It's just private. That's how it survives." He paused. "Mine was public. Messy. And it forced me to rebuild from ashes. But standing here, I know that wasn't the end. It was the beginning." Applause rippled through the crowd. After the session, people lined up to talk. A woman in her mid-30s stepped forward, holding a copy of his book. She introduced herself quietly. Her hands trembled slightly. "My mom was with someone like Jessica. He isolated her, made her doubt everything. She heard your podcast in the hospital, recovering." Mark said nothing, just listened. "She left him. She's in a shelter now, healing." The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a crayon drawing. "She asked me to give you this." Mark unfolded it. A sketch of a house, sunshine, and 3 words in messy handwriting. "You saved me." His throat tightened. She touched his hand gently. "My mom says she sees you in my eyes, because she said you reminded her what survival looks like." Mark didn't speak. Couldn't. But he nodded. Because that drawing? That was the reason it was all worth it. It rained again, just like it had the day of the fake funeral. Only this time, Mark didn't watch from a distance. He walked through the old cemetery slowly. No umbrella, no destination, just letting the drops hit him like a baptism. He stopped near the edge of the grounds, under the same tree where he'd once stood 6 feet from his own empty grave. There was no headstone here, just a small plaque someone had left for him during the height of the trial. Mark Sullivan, the man who refused to die. He stared at it for a long time, then knelt down and brushed off the leaves. A small bouquet sat beside it, fresh. He didn't know who left it. He didn't need to. Behind him, footsteps approached. Light. Familiar. Angela. She stopped beside him without speaking. Mark looked up at the sky, then at her. "You ever think about how close it was?" "All the time," she said. A long silence passed between them, comfortable now. You saved more than you know, she added. And not just strangers. You saved me. He looked at her. You saved me first. They stood together for a while. The storm softening. The world quiet. And then, gently, Angela placed something beside the plaque, a tiny pin with the shield logo. You don't need a grave, she said. You have something better. Mark nodded. Legacy. As they walked back toward the car, Mark glanced over his shoulder one last time. He smiled. Not because it was over, but because the man he used to be, the one who almost died silent, unnoticed, betrayed, that man finally got to rest. And the one walking away? He was just getting started. Mark sat at the corner desk of his apartment late that night, the city lights painting fractured reflections across the glass window. The hum of traffic below faded under the soft click of keys as he opened his email. Not his public account, not the Foundation inbox. The old one. The one he hadn't touched in nearly a year. The one where it all started. He scrolled past hundreds of spam emails, old newsletters, company updates. His hand hovered when he saw the one, still unread. Still there. Subject: We'll need the body gone before Friday. From Ryan's account. Meant for Jessica. Meant to be private. Instead, it had landed in Mark's inbox by mistake. The wrong click. The wrong contact autofilled. The right moment. He clicked it open again, though he had every word memorized. He doesn't suspect a thing. I upped the dosage this week. He's slowing down. Foggy. Just like you said. Once it's done, you call the hospital. I'll handle the rest. Mark sat back in the chair. One wrong email. That's all it took. One accidental thread pulled, and the whole web fell apart. He didn't believe in fate. Not really. But that message? That was more than coincidence. That was the universe choosing a side. He opened a blank draft. Began typing. To the person who just discovered the first crack in their relationship. To the person reading this, stomach sinking, wondering if it's real, save this email. Screenshot it. Archive it. Because truth has a way of showing up when it matters most. I'm living proof. He stopped. Didn't send it. Just saved it in drafts. Maybe someone else would find it someday, by accident, just like he did. And if they did, they'd know exactly what to do. Mark leaned back, closed the laptop, and for the first time, didn't need answers. Because he had them all. Right from the very start. A year later. One stage. One man. One story that refused to stay buried. The theater was packed. Not a courtroom. Not a news show. Just a simple spotlight and a single chair where Mark Sullivan sat, holding nothing but a mic. The podcast had turned into a live show, sold out in under 5 minutes. The documentary had gone global. People weren't here for drama. They were here for truth. Mark adjusted the mic, cleared his throat. When I opened that wrong email, he began, I thought it was a mistake. He paused. It was a gift. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some of you came here for closure. Some for justice. Some just to understand how someone could plan your death while still kissing you goodnight. He let that sit. I've been asked, over and over, how I survived. He looked directly into the spotlight. The real answer? I didn't survive because I'm strong. I survived because I paid attention. Screens lit up across the crowd, phones recording, faces tear-streaked. I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but I stopped pretending things weren't broken. I stopped giving second chances to people who only sharpen their knives. He stood up. And maybe you're sitting here tonight feeling exactly like I did. Gaslit, ignored, erased. The room stilled. He leaned into the mic, voice steady. But let me tell you this. Being betrayed doesn't make you weak. Choosing to come back from it? That's power. Applause. Loud. Rising. He smiled. And if you're out there right now, living with unanswered questions, ask them. He pointed to the crowd. And if the answers scare you, don't run. Investigate. He stepped back, nodding to the host off stage. His story was finished. But the movement? Just getting started. 2 years later, Mark stood in the backyard of a modest house on a quiet hilltop. The garden was full. The wind gentle. The past, present, and future finally balanced. He sat on the porch, a dog curled at his feet, laptop open as he read messages from strangers across the globe. Your story saved my sister. I walked away after hearing your voice. You gave me the courage to open that file I was afraid to read. One message stood out. How do you know when you've truly healed? Mark smiled, closed the laptop. He didn't need to answer with words. He answered by standing up, breathing deep, and simply being. He had survived betrayal, poison, lies, and public judgment. But he hadn't let it define him. He built something from the ashes. Something that outlived the pain. The wind shifted. He looked out over the horizon and whispered, "You saw me die. Now, watch me live." And maybe, somewhere out there, a voice replied. Because stories like this don't end in silence. They echo. So here's a question for you. The one who stayed until the final breath of this story. Have you ever trusted the wrong person and survived it? Tell us in the comments. Where are you watching from? And if this story hit you hard, don't just scroll. Like it if it shook you. Share it if it helped you. And subscribe, not just for content, but because truth deserves an audience. Until the next story. Stay sharp, stay awake, and never ignore the feeling that something just isn't right.